For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber. Instant analysis of USC's Tuesday practice leading up to the Utah game on Saturday. The biggest news to come out of practice was Marlon Tuipulotu, the freshman defensive lineman. He's elected to get back surgery, which means he will be out for the rest of the season. But the good news is, if there's good news, is that he was under the game threshold, so he will be able to redshirt this year.
Right, I think that made the decision where you have to get a decision. You have to do it now because he's played the 4 games anymore. He doesn't get the chance to have the red shirt. So whether he will be one of those guys that will be a potential 5th-year player, I think that's always a question. We have a player of his talent. Do they stay around for a 5th year? With linemen, sometimes more with offensive linemen than with defensive linemen, but you just never know. But it's probably really a smart thing to do if you can do it. You know it needs to be done, apparently. I mean, they're saying, not very specific, lower back injury, maybe something that he got when he was younger, something that bothered him through spring and through the summer. So it's that when they try to do core strength work with him, he just didn't quite have it. And this is a kid that just, you look at him, he can't be any stronger. So I think they knew something was going on, and the MRI showed them something was going on. Clay wasn't absolutely specific in terms of, okay, this is exactly what they did. He said, I'm not a doctor, a lower back injury, and surgery today.
Mm-hmm. Other injury updates, Porter Gustin again was not at practice. Same with Jamel Cook. Apparently he's out with sickness. And then Daniel Imatorbhebhe got the most work we've seen in a while from him. You and I both got to talk to him. He was a little wishy-washy. And then as far as Chuma Edoga and Stephen Carr, they rehabbed. But they didn't, no boots, but they still were wishy-washy as well.
Yeah, I think Chuma was out the whole practice, had a hoodie on, no pads, kind of limping a little bit, that high ankle sprain. You wouldn't think he's a candidate to play this Saturday. I think Stephen Carr is absolutely not a candidate. He's out of the boot, but I would be, it would be a total shock if he plays this week. But if they get Daniel back and Chuma back, and Stephen back, say for Notre Dame, if they can get through this week, they'll probably be pretty happy if it works out like that. And that looks like that's the plan.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Daniel said that he wouldn't come back unless he was 100%. And he told me that he's 95-98 or 97-98. So we wouldn't really expect him for Utah.
He does look a little different. I mean, first of all, we're seeing him in full pads for the first time in forever, and so that looks good. And he got to run some early 11-on-11 stuff, not once they started, at least leaning on one another. But he looks, for a while there, he didn't look like he was making any progress at all. And now he looks better every time you see him. So he's moving certainly in the right direction. And what a plus he will be when he comes back. He changes the offense just a great deal.
Exactly. Speaking of the offense, you got to talk to the offensive line guys, Neil Callaway and Andrew Voorhees. What did they have to think about the performance on Saturday?
Well, Coach Callaway said he thought Andrew, you asked about Andrew first, his first start, and he said he did great. Andrew said he doesn't exactly tell me that, but they've been pretty good, but he wants to keep me grounded. But Coach Callaway said he's really pleased with the way Andrew played, the way Chris Brown played, and the way Toa played. And he's talking about got to get the others to get to where those 3 are. So I asked him, you're going up against, as Clay described it, by far the biggest defensive line that they played. 4 300-pound guys, a couple of 320-pounders. I said, you can be able to run the ball against these guys because they had a good day running the ball today. Coach McCullough was very happy about the way, even without Stephen, that the running backs looked. Thought they had an extra bounce in their step and all that. So I said, Coach Callaway, are you going to be able to run it against these guys? And he said, well, we'll see Saturday. And that's about as far out on a limb as he's ever going to go. He said, I said, well, how's the run game? Do you feel like it's incorporating, all the things your backs can do, and is it where you want it to be? And he said, that's a T question, not for me, ask T. So the other thing was, do you stay with the run? Saturday, Stanford stayed with Bryce Love over and over again, and they weren't getting anything and weren't getting it. And all of a sudden, like the 15th run, he goes 58 yards and essentially wins the game for Stanford. And that's maybe not something you've seen USC do, where they really stay after the run game. And so that was kind of the question. I said, do you guys staying with the run game enough? And that was the final question to Coach Callaway when he said, that's a T question, not for me.
Interesting. You mentioned practice. It did seem like they had a little bit of a pep in their step. It was a good, hard practice. Tyler Vaughns made an amazing one-handed back catch and then curled it in, and Jack Jones stood up and immediately turned to the media and said, did he catch that? He was incredulous, but it was a good practice overall.
Well, Jack, that's perfect because as I said in my notes, Tyler does that at least once a practice, and then Jack Jones does that every single day. He never stops talking to whoever. I mean, it just so yeah. That's the practice in a nutshell. Neither one of them doesn't do what just happened there.
There was a lot of talk in Sam Darnold's scrum about something he said on Saturday, and not necessarily he had a qualm with the play calling, but you can get into this more because I was in an interview, but he talked about the tendencies that USC has on offense. What did he say there?
He said maybe after the game, he said maybe teams are picking up on our tendencies, and maybe they're sitting on those tendencies, and maybe we've got to get away from them. And I think some people interpreted that as, Sam's taking a shot at the play calling. That really was not what he was exactly saying. And then Sam said, I sat down and watched the film, and the more I watched it, he said, I probably wasn't right with what I said. And now somebody said, because at first he said, I really didn't talk to the coaches about it. And somebody, after they heard him say, after watching the film, I kind of knew I really wasn't right about what I said. And somebody said, oh, then you did talk to the coaches, right? And he said, well, maybe. Then he said he apologized to the coaches for saying even that he thought that teams were able to start sitting on USC's tendencies offensively. And he said he didn't think that was the case after watching the film. And then Clay said, that's Sam. He said, I didn't hear an apology from Sam. And I don't think, there really was one. But he said, Sam, that's typical of Sam. He, going to own up to anything. We're probably not getting the exactly straight story as to how this all went down, but they seem to have a meeting of the minds, and I'm guessing they probably will do some things to not let people sit on those tendencies, and Sam will be more pleased with the play calling or the tendencies that they use in this particular game. Where my guess is they'll do some tendencies that will actually not occur as it looks like they're going to.
Heldon acknowledged that Utah has a special place for USC. It's kind of one of the better rivalries in the Pac-12 South. Not to mention, this was the first game that Sam Darnold started last year, and it was also the game that they lost that actually kept them out of the Pac-12 championship last season. So he said that the team is aware that every game counts, and they know the importance of this game, especially because they both are sitting atop the Pac-12 South right now.
Yeah, and I think the focus here is this is the game that kept them. The Utah game last year is the game that kept them out of the Pac-12 championship. They got to a point where it was not in their hands. They could win out, and they still weren't going to be able to determine if they were going to get there or not, and they didn't because they had lost the Utah game. It is an interesting rivalry when you think about the last time Utah won a game in Los Angeles was 1916. 101 years ago was their last win in Los Angeles. So I asked the Utah publisher, Scoutside publisher, I said, does that bother the fans at Utah that they haven't won in over a century in Los Angeles? I mean, do they come down here with their, and he said, no, they come down to go to Disneyland and make a weekend out of it. And so he said, I don't think they think much about the fact that they haven't won in over a century in Los Angeles. So that's kind of their take. They've got 31 players from California, 24 from Southern California, and 4 starters from Southern California. And almost all of those guys are guys that probably would have liked to go to USC and weren't given that opportunity. So from that standpoint, those guys and their family, they don't care about that, 101 years. They really want to win this year. So that makes it a pretty good rivalry.
All right, that's going to wrap it up from Tuesday practice here at USC. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.